A big warm welcome to Birmingham Tech Week. Just before I kick off, I'll just do some of the formalities. So Birmingham Tech Week, in association with Tech Nation, West Midlands Growth Company, and of course the Department for International Trade, three organisations that have supported Birmingham Tech Week this year, along with their sponsors, so NatWest and Copper being two. Big shout out to NatWest. I'm actually a graduate of their entrepreneurial training program, which they run. Did that for 18 months. So without those sponsors, we really couldn't be here doing this. And of course, a whole host of different partners from across the region. My name's Anthony. I'm the founder of the Careers Calendar. And the purpose of today is to talk about my own journey in entrepreneurship, enterprise within the tech space, how I moved from a very traditional business into a business that is led by technology. That's themed in and around student engagement. And of course, what I'll be offering today are some insights, some things that I've learned along the way. And there's plenty of them, so I wasn't stuck for any to decide, but I've sort of picked out the sort of key themes that sort of resonate most with me. And I hope in some way, shape or form, you take something away from this presentation. And of course, if you are in the student engagement space, the careers engagement space particularly, do reach out to us and let's have a conversation. So let's get started. So one of the nice things about this presentation, it actually forced me into a position of looking back and how did we get here? So I'm not going to go as far back as the picture would imply, but that is me as a 4-year-old. Thinking about how did I get into entrepreneurship and all of the things that contributed towards that. I was very lucky in growing up in an environment where I saw entrepreneurship. I saw my own father generate his own income, the people around me generating their own income. So as I moved through the ages and sort of made that decision to step into entrepreneurship, I knew it was possible. And given the economic climate and given the drive to instill entrepreneurship in young people, we must share our stories. We must give access to as many people as possible to evoke a feeling of confidence in the decisions that most people will take. Some people are actually scared of entrepreneurship. Not going to lie, I am too, or at least I was, or I'm less scared. But by 2016, so I'd entered the workforce in 2010 as a qualified careers advisor. I'd done a degree, a master's in careers counselling and the professional training, entered the workforce in 2010, to very quickly realise that organisational culture wasn't for me. Really struggled in that environment. And, it wasn't a distaste for organisational culture, but it was very complex. And I knew that having always had this drive and ambition to work as a careers advisor, I knew that the confinement of an organisation wasn't going to allow me to stretch and reach my sort of potential. So it was with a heavy heart that I left formal employment in and around 2015, took some time off, and then by 2016 I'd launched a campaign called IE Week. Now IE standing for International Education. So this was a campaign to raise awareness of international education opportunities for young people in this country to go and study their full degree in places like Canada, Europe, Australasia, or even the US. There were a consistent number of young people thinking about studying overseas for perhaps the years running up to it, but there seemed to have been a bit of a growth in those years. And the obvious thing for me to do was to launch something and create something. And by 2017, I had a regular cadence of events where I was hosting international universities, bringing them into this country and running events. And I would do crazy things like, for example, 18 events in 6 days consecutively across 2 countries, and I'd attend each one of them. And that was my first sort of step into a business that perhaps took the form and the structure of a limited company. And it taught me a lot about, the the art of doing a business, to running a business, and what it took to sort of get that off the ground, to convince people to buy into an event that didn't even exist, and then to go away and execute and deliver on that. But I knew that, throughout 2017 and 2018, that through observation and a bit of research and prototyping, I knew that my approach to event management, because I didn't train formally as an event manager, it was incredibly stressful. And thinking about the situation that others faced within the sector in terms of event management, because by 2017, 2018, the government were asking schools to deliver on the Gatsby agenda and the career strategy which they mapped out, which came with an expectation that schools would deliver events and engagement activities for their young people and track and record all of that. So by 2019, I was still running events and consultancy, but by that time I'd launched the Careers Calendar version 1, which is a very one-dimensional platform. It served the needs of schools. It was a purpose-built event management and engagement tool just for career leaders. It meant that they could reduce their time and effort in delivering on the events agenda. And I knew that this would have a degree of success because in my research phase, I'd found that career leaders were spending anywhere between 30 and 100 hours a year. This is what they told me in my research on planning events. And I knew that that could be improved. And I knew that given young people and their experience of careers education in schools, I knew that there was an opportunity to create something. Hence, the desire to create the careers calendar. So we did a lot of testing in that first phase, and we actually gave the platform version 1 to schools for free. And the schools very kindly, we had about 160 within 3 months. The schools very kindly told us everything that we needed to do to continue to build on the platform and everything that was missing within that environment. Which was great, but obviously 2020 came along, and before we knew it, we were all in lockdown, COVID had hit, and nobody was planning face-to-face events, and therefore my platform was redundant, or at least until they were back up and running. Therefore, it was with a heavy heart that we took it offline to secure some funding from Coventry University for their network grants under the European Research Development Fund. And we spent the entire summer creating version 2, which meant that we could attend to the needs, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but we could attend to the needs of all stakeholders that are engaged with the student career engagement process. And of course, 2021, we haven't set any hard and fast objectives. We just have some intentions to do stuff that hopefully lead us towards our sort of longer term objectives. I'm sure most people will agree it's very difficult at the moment to go beyond next month, let alone next year. So that's the sort of timeline of my journey. And if I was to summarize all of that up, living in hope, taking a chance and trusting my own intuition, hugely important. This is a quote from George Livingston, in fact. And, if you're not in hope, then you're without it. And if you're not prepared to take a chance, then you're not moving forward. You're not stepping into that dream that you've sort of created in your head. And entrepreneurship for me evoked all of these feelings: fear, anxiety, excitement. There was a whole host, a myriad of emotions. And this image here, it's not photoshopped. It's an image that is taken from the CN Tower in Canada. So even back in 2014, when I realized I had a particularly challenging time within organizational structures, I went home one night and mapped out a plan to travel the world on the hashtag around the world in 80 universities. I screwed up the bit of paper, threw it in the bin. I thought, you're ludicrous. You're losing your mind. So that was me on university number 20. So I'd managed to, part of setting up International Education Week, I managed to travel Australia, Canada, and Europe, visiting universities, blogging about them. And as I was doing that, I was engaging them to come to this country and to raise their own profile with students who were interested in studying overseas. And like all things, we should be prepared to do something twice. There I am last summer doing a skydive for Birmingham St Mary's Hospice, and in this journey, I've met many different organisations and people within the space. And one that sticks out for me was St Mary's Hospice, listening to their story around how they needed to raise funds to deliver the services that they do. Last summer I jumped out of a plane, and that sort of embodies my approach towards entrepreneurship. Doing something at least twice. Many people within the entrepreneurship space see a no as a hard, fast no. The amount of clients that I've asked more than once if they're interested in a particular product. This time last year I was talking to universities saying, come and join the Careers Calendar platform, get ready because we're onboarding schools. And they said no. Now we're having universities approach us. In fact, straight after this call, we're onboarding our third UK university, which is really exciting. So always be prepared to do something twice. And I always take that approach with visiting cities or reading a book, because you look at things with fresh eyes, new perspectives. So on to the sort of reasons why we're here. So student careers engagement, what is it? And if I was to summarize it into 3 parts, it would be understanding, participation, and deciding. So here we have young people, and when I talk about young people in this context, I'm talking about those that are making decisions around their post-school destination. So typically 15 to 18-year-olds. So here we are in a very complex labour market where it's difficult to predict what the future looks like. It's difficult to know what the future of the jobs market look like. And yet we've got young people trying to understand the opportunities that are available to them. And within all of that, you've got a profession that of people, careers advisors, that don't have the best reputation. For those that perhaps saw a lot of stuff in the press over the last week about the government's approach to algorithms and decision-making tools and messages around going off to, if you're a ballerina, go and retrain in cyber. It hasn't really painted the profession in the best light possible because of a number of different factors, largely because careers education is a political process, and therefore with each new government and each new party, things change quite considerably. But we have a body of young people that are even more keen to participate in that process. And with that comes a range of activities that their school may create for them and events. We're seeing schools all over the country plan career events of all shapes and sizes, whether that be a presentation on a particular destination or a big careers fair. And obviously in a COVID world, a lot of that stuff has moved online, and that's not without its challenges for that group of people. And then we have the decision-making phase. So, students, after they've gathered all of that information and participated, they often are brought to a position of making a decision about their future. And we know that students will consult a variety of different sources before they make a decision. Arguably, a lot of that is online in social media platforms, but the degree to which that quality is there it's hard to measure because we don't know what platforms they're consulting. And of course, in all of this, the schools are run ragged trying to account for what they've delivered and what their students have consumed. They're trying to track and record it. And that, for me, is sort of our USP, giving the schools an opportunity to create that career learning and to track it. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. So this is a kind of sort of high level summary of the careers calendar. And I can't put too much in here because really it's a talking point. So if we look at the drivers, the government agenda, which was set not that long ago, 2017, the career strategy, local and national. So you've obviously got the national strategy, but if you talk to the local enterprise partnerships, they've all got career hubs with an agenda to bridge the gap between employers, largely FE training providers, and their schools. And you've got a body of people supporting that activity, but no real framework that brings all of them together. So this is the careers calendar version 2. We looked at the drivers for the schools. They need to deliver on an agenda, but more importantly, they need to attend to their career needs of their students. You've got the needs of the students in all of this. So students need information to make that decision. And you've got organizational engagement needs. So engagement needs are from an organizational perspective. So an organization like NatWest may engage with a school for CSR purposes, but they might also engage with schools for recruitment purposes. And then you've got a university who perhaps go into a school for pure recruitment objectives. They need to reach a particular number of students. The same is true with colleges and training providers. So you've got these drivers that are driving this behavior. And if you look at the model across the schools, every model is different. So the government agenda set that schools would have a careers leader in post. So you can find two different schools. One will say we have an assistant head that's responsible for careers, not qualified, and has 1 hour a week to do it. You could find another school 20 minutes down the road to find that they have a full-time, they have somebody in the post full-time, which is a really interesting phenomena to find, that there are all of these different models and there are pros and cons between all of them. But for the actual model of engagement, it varies. So you could speak to an assistant head who takes the approach of, I don't know, rallying around a couple of people and saying, there you go, there's my careers talk done for the year. Or you could find that you've got somebody super organized and has tons of spreadsheets and printouts and folders of activities that are going on. Everybody's taking this different approach to event management planning, engagement planning. But if you look at the history of the careers advisor and the leader, there's very little in their training around career events or even event management as a core skill. So is it no wonder, you can arrive at the conclusion, well, there's an engagement problem because the people driving the engagement aren't skilled in event management. If you're an assistant head and you've been given the role of career leader, are you capable of doing event management? And those are my observations. I know that having trained as a careers advisor, when I stepped into 2016 to create the business of the International Education Week, I had a bit of experience of event management, but all of a sudden that had become my core skill. So we've got all of these drivers, and what we do is we serve the needs of the schools, the students, and the organizations all in one go. So we give the schools a bespoke event planning tool. So we've taken a bit of an Amazon style approach to event management. So once a school is set up, they can create events in under 9 clicks. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised by this. So I created an event for a school in Nottingham last year. It took me 5 minutes, let the machine do the work, and turned up 3 weeks later to find a room full of engaged students and the universities there to promote their offering to students. The universities were happy, the students were happy, and I was super happy because it actually worked, but also the level of engagement was high because the platform had done the pre-event engagement piece for me. It managed all of the comms for me, and it even evaluated the actual engagement activity for me. So if I was a careers leader in a school, I would be able to put all of that into the platform, and I would be able to download a report that reflected my activity, so that when I come to evidence my activity with Ofsted or for the Gatsby benchmarks, I would be able to say, here is everything that I've done, and it's been done for me. Yes, I've put everything in there that needs to be done, but you can deliver so much more because event planning takes a lot less time with the careers calendar. And up until the summer, we weren't able to serve the needs of the students. So in all of this, it was quite a passive experience of students. The students would see the web page that's created for the schools to promote the event. Now we have a entrance into the platform just for the students, where they can come in, they can see the events that the schools are planning for them, and they can see the events that are available to them to engage with post or outside of their school environment. So an open day, an employer talk, and that information is presented to them in a way that's consistent with their need. So providing the student says, we're interested in engineering and I'm interested in an apprenticeship, we will serve that information to them in a way that's helpful. And then, of course, we serve the needs of the organisation. So in all of this research that I've carried out and this process of standing in the middle of all of that, you know, we've looked at the schools and their pains, so time, resource, network, the organisation's time, a need to meet a particular number, or whether it be an engagement number or a recruitment number. And they saying the network's a bit sporadic, I can't work out who's the point of contact, I can't necessarily engage with the school because nobody answers the phone, or I send an email, I don't get a reply back. Looking at all those pains and thinking, well, where are they directing that pain? Because you'd get a school say, well, the organisations are disorganised, and you get organisations say, well, the schools are disorganised, and looking at that in the middle and thinking, well, what's all this saying and doing for the students? That's how we've arrived at the careers calendar, and that's how our thinking has shaped that development. So we're a triple-sided platform that serves the needs of the schools, the students, and of course the organisations. And just on that point, we actually launched version 2 weeks ago. Last week we got 56 schools join us. We're at a point where we're promoting the offer to schools and a model that is fair and consistent with everybody. So we know that we're tapping into needs of the schools because they have a desire to do this, and perhaps even more so with COVID, but also onboarding those organisations, saying to those organisations, look, have profile, engage with schools through the platform, but also be a bit more efficient in your engagement approach to engagement. You know, universities are paying between £400 to £500 on cost of acquisition for a student. Yet I've heard students say the reason why I didn't choose a particular university is because they were over marketing, they were everywhere, and it made them appear desperate. So we're looking at a way, a platform that creates that community feel, so a student can come in and say, here are all of my events, I'm going to engage with this, this and this, I'm going to research these organizations, and they can make more sound decisions, more informed decisions about where they go after school. And it's a focused environment. So for instance, your student may be on Instagram scrolling through their stories and see an advert, and it's not the right place in the right time in the right way for them to be thinking always. What we're providing is a concentrated environment for a student to sort of take that seriousness to their career decision making. And you know, this kind of brings me on to my sort of next point about thinking about all of those things. How did I move from a traditional business into a business that is led by technology? And we're often told to think outside the box. If you want to be creative, think outside the box. Well, I don't believe that to be true, because outside of the box is this area of nothingness and uncomfortability around what is outside the box. The best thing to do in this instance is to think about the box. What could the box be? How could the box be different? What do I need to change in order to see a different image in front of me? And this is perhaps akin with principles of design thinking. Here I was looking at a traditionally offline process and listening to the pains of the stakeholders, thinking about a desire to improve and make it easier and simplify the process. What did I need to do? And you know, I'm not a technologist, so I'm not the person behind the software here. I'll introduce you to the guy who is in a moment. But thinking about repurposing and processes and making things, you know, I haven't reinvented the wheel here. I've just looked at a process and said, right, what do we need to do to improve, not improve for the needs of the schools, the students and the organizations. So if you actually break down the box, you actually have 12 lines, which could make a completely different shape. Or if you bend the lines, you could make a circle. You could do anything you need or want with this shape. And you haven't even stepped outside of this box. You've just repurposed everything. You've made things look different. And perhaps that's one of our biggest challenges with the careers calendar is onboarding people. it's not a question of educating people about the platform. It's about encouraging behavioral change. So I've done demos in the last couple of weeks where you just hit a brick wall because people are comfortable with their spreadsheets, with their emails, with their folders, with their printouts. They're comfortable with their whiteboard. Okay, that's fine. You know, we'll see you in a year's time because we want to speak to the early adopters. And it's really easy to recognize the early adopters, the people who are willing to sort of change that behavior really quickly. If you do enough demos, you'll soon pick those people out. There's actually a blog post on our website which goes through this exercise in a bit more detail about thinking about the box. What is the resource that I have currently? How are we doing things currently? And how could things be different? And this sort of supports the point about the entrepreneurial perspective. So the entrepreneurial perspective envisions the business in its entirety first and then derives the parts from that. Whereas the technician's perspective sees the business first in its parts and then puts them together to form a whole. So I am still a small team. We're a team of 3. Up until recently, we're only a team of 2. But here I am with this vision of making improvements, looking at a process and thinking, how can we make it better, easier for all of those parties? Here is the whole. And along came the software developer who said, we can apply technology here. We can develop code that will emulate that behavior and make things better for everybody. So it's a really important thing to think about, especially if you're in that entrepreneurial journey yourselves, because I do know I have been approached by many people who are perhaps on a similar journey to me of creating technology. But it's really important to have that sense of self-awareness around your personality. Am I capable of thinking about this in an entrepreneurial way? And that doesn't mean making money, because, you know, I still haven't made any money off this, and I'm proud to say that. You know, I'm here to solve a really complex problem. But thinking about this as a vision, as a movement, as a way in which to bring people along. And if you do that, you're able to find those people that can look at those parts of your business and bring you along that journey in a way that's better. So I was really lucky. So that's a small team, big difference. So my focus, I'm the founder, my passion is careers education, and my desired purpose is to improve careers education. I knew very early on, I think when I was 16, they were like, what do you want to be when you leave school? And I just was like, careers advisor. I want to help other people identify what they want to do. Just seems like a really easy thing to do, but who wouldn't want to be a careers advisor? You get to talk about people about their careers, and, you know, help people and sort of contribute to a community of young people. And that's my passion. Whereas Eamon, who is responsible for the software, so those in the Birmingham tech community may know Eamon, but he and I met, we had a conversation. I told him about the process and what's going on and the desire to improve things. And he suggested that we sit down and scope things out. And his desire is to use tech to solve problems. And then, of course, Hannah, who has joined us more recently. Hannah, I identified on LinkedIn. She had a great profile. She quite clearly had a passion for improving access to education. And that, for me, I resonated with that because it's something that I believe in fundamentally. We had a chat over the phone, and obviously tying up her skills and looking at social media, she's now just joined the team. So you'll be seeing lots, if you follow us on social media, you'll be seeing lots of really interesting, exciting stuff over the coming months. So my insights really are design matters. So here I was with an idea, but at times unable to articulate that idea, or because I had nothing to back it up, I would leave a conversation and think, no, they're just not getting it. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side with the dates on there, the actual calendar, is the clickable prototype that we took out to clients. I say clients, stakeholders, to show the process, the journey, the thinking behind our platform. And all of a sudden, we were getting feedback from people around what else it could do and the way in which we could improve, or the things that we weren't thinking about. And I didn't really understand what that process meant, but it was sort of the Eamon, the software developer, who said you need to go away and take some clickable prototypes, your MVP, taking a very Dropbox style approach to things. For those that don't know the story, they created a video, $300, and that's how they got client engagement, who then funded the development of the first version of Dropbox. And we kind of did that ourselves. So we took clickable prototypes to people. We said, this is the vision, this is the thinking. We had 5 university supporters from overseas, and they are part of the platform. They'll be forever part of the platform. And that gave us enough validation to say there's something in this. We were going out to schools, not prepared to charge them for a variety of different reasons. We weren't able to necessarily deliver on the school's agenda in the way we wanted to in version 1. So things like reporting. But it taught us a real sort of insight of 3 months of validating our project. So moving to the image on the right-hand side with the University of Birmingham, here are some conceptual images which now support our messaging on our website, which has meant, since having them on, they've actually increased engagement on the web page along with the content that we've designed. But they're able to educate people about what we are, the environment, the platform environment, giving them a sense of this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like. So for anybody that's on that sort of entrepreneurial journey that has an idea that is capable of designing, or has a friend or a contact, design is really important. If you're going to scope out a new idea that's conceptually difficult to understand, then get yourself the designer that can support you, or teach yourself the design skills that you need in order to get there. I'll give you an example. We have, bootstrapped our way through, and, lockdown affording us more time to do things, and lockdown hasn't been easy for me. But I spent time teaching myself Adobe XD, so I'm now able to do those types of designs on the screen rather than having to rely on another person. So think about how you're going to educate your audience, I guess, is the key thing for us here. This is a really funny insight. I was debating whether or not to leave this in here. So organization, this is actually a screen from the clickable prototype. And I know that audio is not on and whatnot, but there is an obvious spelling mistake in here, which I actually didn't see. And there I was, ambitious and excited to show somebody the clickable prototypes. And on occasion, for every 10, 2 people may have said there's a spelling mistake in here. So if you can't see it, it's organization contact number on the right-hand side. And the first time I was a little bit embarrassed, and I didn't get it corrected. I just carried on going out, and I thought, there's a pattern here. Only some people are telling me. What does that tell me about them? So I could draw 2 conclusions. One, that the person that I was presented to had the confidence to tell me that there's a spelling mistake. But more importantly, it told me that this person is a detail-oriented person, and therefore I need to speak to them in a detail-driven way to make sure that I was communicating with them in a way that they can resonate with. And for those that don't know, and those that do, MBTI, Myers-Briggs profile, if you've not done it, do it, 16personalities.com. There's a spectrum. There is an intuitor and a sensor. Intuitors are big picture thinkers. They tend to be your entrepreneurial types. They account for around 25% of the population. And then you have sensors who are detail driven. They're here in the moment now, and they're focused on the detail, the black and white, the factual stuff. They don't really do conceptual ideas all that well. So here I am with this ambitious dream to help not just 1 or 2 schools, but hundreds, if not thousands. And I was taking these clickable prototypes out to professionals in education, showing them that there was a spelling mistake. And in the moment, if somebody said, you've made a spelling mistake, or there's a typo there, I'd say, yeah, no, I just haven't had a chance to change it. But in that moment, I was able to infer that this is a detail-driven person, that perhaps I need to speak in a detail-driven way, because my personality is big picture thinker, don't do detail. So naturally, I'm always coming from a position of not giving enough detail. So it's just a little bit of insight that I wanted to share. I hope that tells you something about the world. And this is what we've finished with in terms of design. You know, if you head over to the careerscalendar.com website, you will pick up where we're moving towards. There are still some gaps that we need to fill, but we are moving in the right direction. So moving on to sort of away from design and into an image that sort of reflects. And number 3 is that there are 3 parties that I have to attend to. There's the needs of the schools, there's the needs of the students, and the needs of the stakeholders. Stakeholders being organisations, universities, colleges, training providers. And that's not easy. You know, often we find businesses are very one-dimensional. You know, they sell a product which serves a need, and it tends to need of one particular, I don't know, I'm a bold guy, so, you know, hair, you know, spray that you can use that will thicken your hair, right? So that serves a very particular niche audience, whereas we're tackling a problem that exists within 3 key parties. So we have to be prepared to look at things from both ways. Here we have the schools that are saying, we don't want another marketing platform. And here we have organizations that want all of the luxuries of a marketing platform to aggressively market themselves in a space that is limited. There are only a set number of young people in the country. And how do we strike a balance between all of those parties? And it wasn't really until I did the ICP exercise, so the ideal customer profile exercise, for those 3 stakeholders. And it was incredibly draining because it had to be detailed. And the only way to arrive at that was by making some assumptions, but also testing those assumptions, by going out and speaking to schools, by speaking to organizations, and more importantly, speaking to students. And, you know, I've often thought what keeps me motivated is the fact that I've had students in this business as placement students or in and around the business, and they've always said, I wish I had something like this when I was at school. So thinking about the needs of those parties and being able to change your messaging where appropriate, but approaching this from a position of empathy. And, you know, if you're a business owner, or even if you're in employment and you have a desire to create something, or a need to do those ICPs, then work on your empathy skills, work on the ability to go out there and listen to what's being said, but also listen to what's not being said. And that's how you can shape a product that meets the needs of your stakeholders. Now, not everybody loves us, partly because not everybody knows about us, but we know that there are people out there that just get it. They see the product, they see the platform, they're like, oh my God, this is going to make my life so much easier. I'm going to use it. Event planning done in 9 clicks, taken care of. You get your report. That's what we say to the schools, the organizations. You can have profile, you can advertise your events on here, you can engage with students in a meaningful way. We will distribute information to the right students at the right time, because there's this overwhelm within the student population around how they feel around making a decision around their career. So this is one of my insights, the ability to move up and down the spectrum of thinking and moving from one perspective to another. And often we get caught in, particularly entrepreneurship, where it can be quite stressful. You're looking at a cash flow runway that might run out next week, or you've got other stresses on. And what happens in that moment of stress, you default to a position of thinking and you're unable to see other perspectives. So in all of this, it's really important that you manage your levels of stress so that you don't fall into that narrow one-dimensional thinking process, which often I get caught in. But when I do, I step out, I do whatever I need to do to sort of reduce that level of stress. Next insight, so building perspective. So, you know, I thought, oh, I'll talk about content here, but actually it's about building a perspective, looking at a current perspective, breaking it down into its parts and then rebuilding. So as a business, what do we stand for? You know, who are we? Are we able to articulate this in an efficient way that resonates with our audience? I think we are. You know, we're all about making student engagement easy. What does our audience believe in? Thinking about them, you know, constantly thinking about them and how their needs and their interests might change. And sitting with them for as long as possible, you know, understanding a stakeholder's needs and making sure that that purpose is tied. There aren't many people that I've come across in the careers engagement space that don't care about students. You know, we all enter that profession with a view to help students in their career. So, you know, I'm quite lucky in that sense. Articulating the mission, and that could be done through the ICP and by asking questions. Sitting on the phone with your clients or on a Zoom, or putting them all together in a room. I'm not sure the image is in here, but I did something really interesting with a group of career leaders by getting them to come in to our offices and asking them what's going on and how can it be improved. Incredibly insightful for me in that moment in time. What makes you unique? And being prepared to ask yourself this question: what really makes you unique? So in all of this, I can say that our platform, there are other platforms out there, but our platform puts the careers leader in the driving seat for driving engagement, where they can capture and record and track all of that activity that goes on. At the moment, it's done offline, it's done sporadically, it's done by different people, and it's hard to track and measure. That's where our unique offering lies, because there are other event management platforms out there, there are other careers engagement platforms out there. But what we're doing is we're creating, you know, the real driver of this is the careers leader, giving them the tools and the model and the framework, and then saying, right, this is how we can capture that information that you're being asked to by the government to report on. Questions. So the next thing I'd like to talk about here very quickly is questions. How does this business work, and how to take an outer-directed results approach? So how does this business work? It is so fascinating. The amount of times that I get asked, how does it financially work? And it wasn't until January of this year when I was in a room with both colleges and schools, and they asked me about the commercial model, which is important. It's the thing that enables you to sustain as a business. But I said that we would charge organizations and not schools. And there was an awful silence in the room with the organizations. Hang on a minute, the schools have got just as big a need as we've got to do this, and they need to report on it. So why should we pay? And there's this horrible kind of atmosphere between who should actually pay for careers education across the sector. And I think that's what makes the sector a really difficult space. And of course, over the last 10 years, this drive to commercialize the sector at the same time makes it a more competitive space. But how does our business work? You know, how are we going to make this a financially sustainable business? And it wasn't until I launched version 2 when I really understood, actually, here we are now meeting the school's needs in more ways than we did in version 1. We're also meeting the organizational needs. And at the same time, we're meeting the needs of the students in terms of seeking out careers information. But what that meant is I was able to devise a model which was very different to the model that I'd created in sort of year 1 of this project. But I was able to devise a model that is completely free. But if an organization or a school wants to upgrade their account, then the option to do that is in the platform. Because we're talking to highly educated people that don't want to sit on a sales call, that can make reasonable adjustments. And by the time we've finished a demo, often a careers leader will say, I'm in, I'm going to use this because it's going to just save so much time. So we don't need to, you know, put a sales team on the floor and get them calling all 4,000 schools in one big hit, because that's just not what we're about as a brand. We bring people into that platform environment. We've made the onboarding process really simple and easy, and there's onboarding videos within the platform to support that. and they're free to use it. And of course, we are available to support them if they have any questions. But the autonomy that we're providing is very much like a sort of MailChimp approach. You know, here you are, we'll give you this much for free. If you want to upgrade, you make the decision within the platform. And of course, this idea of how to take an outer-directed results approach, and you can soon pick these types of people up who are thinking for themselves or thinking about other people. If I enter a conversation with a school, it's not about me and my objectives and my agenda. I am there to see if I can help a school. And often if I pick up the phone and speak to a school and say, are you planning an event? Yeah. Tell me about the process. Oh, it's laborious, it's time consuming, it's stressful. Then I'm able to show a model and at least get them to entertain that idea of what we're about. And it's with those thoughts around being a technology business, you know, I'm not here for myself. The technology, the framework is there for other people to use, for them to get the results that they need. And then, of course, in all of this, I guess content was going to be the main theme for this slide, but actually it's the final point. Content that reflects your perspective, content that resonates with others. So I'm just going to show you this slide. So here we are with a website that was getting very few hits at the beginning of the year. And these are our last 28 days. So we're at about 1,000 regular users a month, well, new users. And we are ranked in position 1 for Google SEO. And again, that was something that I taught myself over lockdown. Trending on LinkedIn, all because we are delivering content that is relevant and resonates with our intended audiences. And that for me is a really important point, not just in business, if you're in an organization, if you are, I'll give you an example, if you're a careers leader in a school, you have to create content that resonates with your student body. Otherwise, it's just going to be ignored. There's so much noise in the space at the moment. But what is really interesting about lockdown life is actually things have got quieter, and therefore the really interesting things are sticking out. The things that people want to engage with, they're going to engage with them. So, you know, I'm quite proud as a sort of founder to have achieved this this early on. And as I said, last week we got over 50 signups for the platform, which, you know, let's live in hope that we get more signups as we move through the weeks. What's my final, I think this is my final insight. So my final insight is a thing called the Socratic Method. So if you've not read about this, go away and read it, research it, but I'll just give you a viewpoint of how I see this in practice. And for many other tech founders especially, here you are with a model and a framework for doing something, and you're likely to embark on a journey of digitalizing that thing. And you have got to positively influence people. You've got to move people away from what they're currently doing into a position of doing what it is that you're offering. And there's 3 simple steps really. So for you to give an initial definition or an opinion, so tell me about careers engagement, what's going on, this is what it means. Step 2, so ask a question that raises an exception to that definition or opinion. So, you know, gently challenge away at that definition. This is how I see it. So an example, I do my annual careers fair once a year, and that's enough for my students. Is it really? Step 3, give a better definition or an opinion. So through the Careers Calendar platform, not only can you plan that event in under 9 clicks, but you can create a program that is bespoke to the needs of individual students, whether that be career learning activities or live events that are virtual or events that might be face-to-face at some point in the future. So if you don't know about this model, go away and read it. I got to a point in my journey where I thought, God, there's about 8,000 people in this community. How am I going to influence them all? And how am I going to influence them as quickly as possible? And it wasn't until a mentor made an observation on this and said, you are applying this model to your practice. So that for me was a real insight, and therefore I'm sharing it with you. And then finally, do important work, show your purpose. So here is an image of us in version 1, and we invited some career leaders from the local schools. So that is the NatWest building in Birmingham, which I miss greatly. And there we are with our clickable prototypes, showing the careers leaders what our vision and thoughts were. Each one of them had something to say, whether it was, have you thought about this? Can you do this? Will it do that? And that for me is where our success lies. It's about going out to our stakeholders and saying what needs to be done. We had our first schools plan events through the platform last week on the version 2. And they got back in touch with us and said, oh, do you know that process for inviting students? Could you put a reminder on there? Yeah, no problem. We're going to turn that around next week. So it's about being agile to the needs of your stakeholders, really important. And to really listen, get those people together, because quite often, if you have a clearly defined mission and a purpose, people will want to come along with you if you offer them a way in which to follow, and to evoke a feeling of, we're in this together, we're all doing this, can we improve that? And if the answer is yes, then you've got something to give. That brings me to the end. So contact us, we'd love to connect. Follow us on Facebook if you can, Careers Calendar. Our email address is there, and of course our website, careerscalendar.com. Stay in touch, because we're going to do bigger things in 2021 with our intentions that are set. And we love to talk to other people, because without other people, we would not be here. So, big shout out to Birmingham Tech Week for their support, Yanis in particular, and Pam at NatWest, but also the broader community, because Birmingham has a lot to offer, and Birmingham can position itself as a real challenger in terms of its entrepreneurial tech space. And that is me finished. If anyone's got any questions, I'm going to stop sharing there. Please feel free to, Yanis. Oh, Yanis has said something. Try to sign with King Solomon as we speak. I absolutely get it. Oh, Gene. So there we go. We've got to sign up. That is brilliant. So that is me finished, and I am going to. Amazing session. Thank you very much. Share your story. Nazra's got an interesting tech story, and I think she is going to be somebody that's going to make a real positive difference to young mothers in particular. So if anyone's got any questions, now is the time to ask. And if not, connect on LinkedIn, Facebook, social media, whatever you need, whatever your platform is, please get in touch with us. And I'm going to draw it to an end. Great talk, Anthony. Thank you, Ange. Is that Ange in South Korea? Joe McFadden. What difference does having a careers advisor make for students going into university and beyond? That is a good question. If you think about it, there are differences between a careers advisor and a careers leader. Careers leader is often the one that's driving the engagement. It is I hope you're well in South Korea. Ange is a very talented up-and-coming designer. Joe, so there are differences between a careers leader and a careers advisor. An advisor is there to support individual student career decision making and to give students, particularly those at the age of 16 to 18, a supportive place in which they can work out what it is that they want to do once they've consulted many different streams of information. I hope that answers your question, but I'd be keen to talk to you again if you have any more information. I did all of that without my Zoom camera on. Brilliant. Eamon as well is in, so big shout out to Eamon, who is a very talented software developer. So that's it, guys. I am going to sign off, and the recording of this will be available. But if you need to, reach out to me anytime that you might want to get in touch. Thank you. Bye.